A boy with nothing but a dream. Welcome to this story. It is more than a history lesson. It is a lesson in life. A lesson in pain, in hope, in courage, and in greatness. This is the story of a boy who was born with nothing. No money, no home, no food, not even shoes. But he had one thing. A dream. This is the true story of Louis Vuitton, the man behind the most powerful luxury brand in the world. Humble beginnings. Louis Vuitton was born in 1821 in a small village called Anche, in eastern France. The village was quiet, surrounded by hills and forests. But life there was not easy. Most families were poor. His father, Xavier Vuitton, was a carpenter. He made simple wooden furniture, tables, chairs, boxes. His mother, Caron Gaillard, made hats by hand and sold them to local women. They worked hard from morning to night. But still, there was never enough money. Some days, they ate only bread and onions. Meat was a luxury. Warm clothes were rare. Louis grew up in a tiny wooden house. The roof leaked when it rained. The floor was cold in winter. There was no heating, no blankets, and no comfort. But this was normal. He didn't complain, because no one around him had more. Still, even as a little boy, he knew something was missing. A child who watched the world. While other children played in the mud, Louis watched the road. The road that passed through his village was used by travelers. They came with beautiful clothes, tall boots, and large wooden trunks. Louis was fascinated. He would sit for hours, just watching them. Where were they going? Who were they? What was inside those trunks? He dreamed of leaving, of seeing other places. He wanted to know the world. He didn't have a map. He didn't have books. But his imagination was strong. He saw himself somewhere far away, doing something great. When he wasn't dreaming, he was working. He helped his father carry heavy wood. He cleaned sawdust from the floor. He learned how to hold a hammer and how to use tools. His hands became rough. His back became strong. He had no toys, but he had skills. Even in the darkest winters, when snow covered the ground, he kept working and dreaming. A tragedy too soon. When Louis was 10 years old, tragedy struck. His mother became sick. There were no hospitals in the village. No doctors. No medicine. She got weaker each day. Louis brought her tea, helped with her hats, and stayed by her bed. But nothing helped. One morning, she didn't wake up. Louis stood by her small wooden grave. He didn't cry. He didn't speak. He just felt a silence inside him, a hole that would never close. His father, once strong and warm, became cold and quiet. He stopped speaking much. He worked less and slept more. He had lost the love of his life. Now Louis had to grow up faster than most boys. He cooked, cleaned, and worked every day. But he also made a promise to himself. I will not live like this forever. I will find my way out. A silent decision. When Louis turned 13, he made a choice. He would leave the village. He would go to Paris. Everyone in France spoke of Paris. The city of art, fashion, opportunity. A place where dreams could come true. But the city was 470 kilometers away. And Louis had no money. No horse. No food. No map. Still, he packed a small bag. A shirt, a piece of bread, and a strong will. One morning, before the sun came up, he walked out of his village. He did not say goodbye. He knew no one would let him go if he did. His journey had begun. Walking into the unknown. The road to Paris was long, cold, and dangerous. Louis walked during the day and slept under trees at night. He crossed forests, rivers, and rough roads. Sometimes he worked in small villages, helping farmers for a bowl of soup or a place to sleep. Sometimes, he had nothing. No food for 2 or 3 days. No shoes. Only torn cloth wrapped around his feet. When it rained, he was soaked. When it snowed, he was frozen. But he kept going, one foot after the other. He told himself, this is not the end. This is just the beginning. Other travelers laughed at him. Some ignored him, but a few gave him bread, a blanket, a kind word. These small gifts kept him alive. He did not count the days, only the steps. It took him 2 years to reach the edge of Paris. 2 years of pain, hunger, cold, and silence. But he made it. The harsh city. Paris was nothing like Angers. It was loud, busy, and full of smells and colors. Carriages rolled through stone streets. Shops sold fresh bread, golden cakes, and silk dresses. Louis stood at the edge of the city with wide eyes. He had never seen so many people. But he had no idea where to go. That night, he found an old wooden cart behind a bakery. He crawled inside, hugged his bag, and closed his eyes. The next morning, the smell of warm croissants filled the air. His stomach twisted, but he had no money. He walked from shop to shop, asking for work. But everyone said the same thing: no experience, no job, too young, too poor, go away. He was tired, dirty, hungry, but he still believed, my chance will come. The first step into a new world. A moment of courage. One cold evening, as the sun disappeared behind the rooftops of Paris, Louis sat near a bakery, trying to warm his hands with his breath. He was weak, hungry, and almost out of hope. Then he saw something. A man on the street was trying to carry a huge wooden trunk into a shop. It looked heavy, and the man was struggling. Without thinking, Louis stood up and ran to help. Let me help you, sir, he said, grabbing the other side of the trunk. The man looked surprised but didn't stop him. Together, they lifted the trunk into the workshop. Inside, Louis saw something that took his breath away. The workshop. The workshop smelled like fresh wood, leather, and glue. There were trunks everywhere, big ones, small ones, round ones. Some were plain, others covered in rich leather with brass corners and gold initials. Louis's eyes widened. This place was like a dream. A world of craft, detail, and beauty. The man turned to him. You're strong for your size, he said. What's your name? Louis. Louis Vuitton. What do you want? Louis swallowed hard. I want to work. The man raised an eyebrow. Do you know how to make trunks? No, sir. But I can learn. The test. The man introduced himself as Monsieur Maréchal, one of the best trunk makers in Paris. He studied Louis for a moment. Everyone says they can work. But most boys give up when it gets hard. Louis answered with honesty. I've walked for 2 years to get here. I have nothing, but I'm ready to give everything. The man paused. No money, he said. You'll work first, learn, then we'll talk. Louis smiled. Thank you, sir. He had just opened the door to his future. A new beginning. Louis arrived at the workshop before sunrise the next morning. He wore the same old shirt and shoes wrapped in cloth. His job was simple: sweep the floor, organize the tools, bring water and clean brushes, watch. But Louis did more than watch. He studied. He observed how wood was chosen, how patterns were cut, how every corner was measured with care. He listened to how leather made a sound when stitched just right. At night, when the others went home, Louis stayed behind. He practiced with broken pieces of wood. He stitched old fabric together by candlelight. His fingers bled, but he kept going. He was not there to pass time. He was there to become great. The first creation. One morning, Maréchal entered the shop and saw a small wooden panel on the table. It was not from any of his workers. The edges were clean. The stitching was straight. Who made this? He asked. Louis stepped forward. I did, sir. After work. The old man didn't smile, but he nodded. You've been watching closely. From that day, Maréchal let Louis stay late to practice, officially. He gave him old tools, showed him techniques. Step by step, Louis learned how to make strong, light frames, how to treat canvas and leather, how to install strong locks and perfect edges, how to mix glue and polish with precision. It wasn't just work, it was art. Becoming a craftsman. Weeks turned into months. Months turned into years. Louis wasn't just learning, he was improving faster than the others. He had a natural eye for balance, proportion, and beauty. He created new shapes. He suggested better materials. Sometimes, older workers asked him for help. His hands were rough, his back strong, his eyes focused. He was not a boy from the village anymore. He was a craftsman. And word started to spread. A name customers asked for. By the time Louis was 20, he was no longer a helper. He was the one customers requested by name. Noblewomen came to the shop and said, "I want the young man. The one called Vuitton." They trusted his hands. They trusted his designs. They loved his precision and care. He didn't rush his work. He didn't make promises he couldn't keep. Every trunk he made became a small piece of perfection. Maréchal began giving him the best clients. And Louis started to think, what if one day, this was my shop? More than just a job, Louis didn't work for money alone. He worked for pride, for meaning, for the feeling that he was building something beautiful from nothing. He still lived simply, one meal a day, a shared room with other workers. But he didn't mind. He had purpose. He started writing ideas in a notebook. Make lighter trunks. Canvas better than leather? Trunks for modern travel? The ideas were seeds. One day, one of them would grow. A moment that changed everything. The unexpected guest. One afternoon, the workshop was quieter than usual. Then, a fancy black carriage stopped outside. 2 guards stepped out. Then a woman, elegant, tall, and dressed in silk, entered the shop. She wore white gloves, a golden brooch, and a crown-shaped hairpin. She was surrounded by silence. Every worker stopped what they were doing. She was Empress Eugénie, the wife of Napoleon III, the ruler of France. She looked around with sharp eyes. Most of the trunks didn't impress her. Then her gaze stopped on a young man working quietly in the back. "You," she said, "are you the one they call Vuitton?" Louis stood up, nervous. "Yes, Your Majesty." "Come here," she ordered. "I need a trunk, but not like these. They're heavy. They're old. They're useless for my travels." She crossed her arms. "I want something elegant, but light. Something I've never seen before." The idea that dared to be different. Louis didn't panic. He looked straight at her and spoke calmly. "Your Majesty, what if your trunk had a flat top instead of a round one?" The room fell silent. No one had ever said such a thing before. "Flat?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "Yes. Flat trunks are easier to stack, lighter to carry, more practical. I would cover it with canvas, not leather. Waterproof, elegant, a modern design." The Empress tilted her head, considering his words. "No one has made such a thing before." "I will," said Louis. "I promise it will be unlike anything you have seen." A small smile appeared on her face. "Do it, Vuitton. Impress me." The mission of a lifetime. Louis didn't waste a second. He worked night and day in a small back room. He used poplar wood, light but strong. He designed a flat surface so trunks could be stacked like boxes. He treated canvas to make it water-resistant, durable, and beautiful. He hand-polished the locks, corners, and handles. His fingers were covered in glue. His hands shook from lack of sleep. He skipped meals. He stopped speaking to anyone. But he was driven by one thought. "This is my chance. I will not fail." The reveal. When the trunk was finished, it was stunning. The canvas had a soft gray shine. The brass locks were engraved. The stitching was perfect. It wasn't just a trunk. It was a masterpiece. Louis carried it himself to the royal palace. He waited, nervous, in the grand marble hall. When the empress entered, silence followed her like a shadow. She examined the trunk. Her fingers traced the canvas. She opened it, tested the locks, checked the corners. She said nothing for a long time. Then she looked at Louis. "This is extraordinary," she said. "And then, from now on, you will be my personal trunk maker." The turning point. The next day, the news spread through Paris. Empress Eugenie chooses young Vuitton. Flat trunk design shocks luxury world. Who is this boy from the countryside? Rich clients flooded the workshop. Everyone wanted what the empress had. And they wanted Vuitton to make it. Louis was no longer just a worker. He was the name on everyone's lips. But there was a problem. He was still under someone else's roof. Still working in Maréchal's shop. If he wanted real freedom, he had to make a bold move. A shop of his own. After years of loyal service, Louis did something few dared to do. He left the workshop. With his small savings, he rented a tiny room near Place Vendôme. He bought a single workbench, a few tools, some materials. He painted a wooden sign. Louis Vuitton, Maletier, trunk maker. There were no employees. No investors. No guarantees. But there was a dream. And two hands ready to work. The first orders. The first few weeks were hard. Louis worked 16 hours a day. He polished brass. He cut wood. He stitched canvas. Alone. One by one, the first customers came. "Are you the one who made the empress's trunk?" "Yes," Louis said. "Come in." He took every order personally. He listened to each client's story, their needs, their dreams. Then he built something just for them. That's why they returned. That's why they told others. Louis didn't just sell trunks. He sold trust. Surviving storms, building a legacy. When the world falls apart, Louis's shop was finally growing. More clients, more orders, more hope. Then, it all stopped. The Franco-Prussian War broke out in 1870. France was torn apart. Cities were bombed. Businesses closed. Rich clients fled. Factories shut down. Luxury became meaningless. People needed food, not fashion. Louis sat in his workshop, staring at empty tables. His hands itched to work, but there were no trunks to build. He refused to close. He sold his extra tools. He repaired broken carts and old furniture for coins. He lived on dry bread and boiled potatoes. But he didn't quit. The day after the war. When the war ended, Paris woke up like a sleeping giant. People returned. Life returned. So did travel. Wealthy clients came back, looking for elegance again. But they didn't want the old styles. They wanted something new. And they remembered the man who once made a trunk for a queen. Louis's shop filled with orders. He worked from dawn until midnight. He hired his first apprentice. Then another. And another. He trained them all himself. He taught them not just to build, but to care. He said, "A Vuitton trunk is not finished until it is perfect." Bigger dreams, bigger space. In 1871, Louis opened a larger workshop in Asnières, just outside Paris. It was close to the Seine River, where boats delivered wood and canvas. He built a house beside the workshop. There, he lived with his wife Clemence Emily and their son Georges. For the first time, Louis had space. Space to work, space to dream, space to build an empire. The new workshop had high ceilings and wide tables. Sunlight poured through the windows. It was more than a factory, it was a temple of craftsmanship. He trained dozens of workers. He still touched every product. Nothing left the workshop unless he approved it. The family behind the name. At home, Clemence Emily supported her husband in every way. She helped manage orders, kept track of clients. She encouraged Louis when business was slow. She reminded him to rest when he worked too much. Their son, Georges, watched everything. He loved the smell of leather, the sound of hammers. He asked questions, took notes, learned fast. Louis often said, "If I disappear tomorrow, Georges will continue the dream." And Georges listened. He saw not only a father, but a master, a man who built something from nothing. The customers who changed the brand. In the 1880s, Louis's clients were no longer just nobles and aristocrats. They were explorers, artists, businessmen, and bankers. They wanted trunks for safaris, trips across the ocean, train journeys to Asia. Louis created trunks with secret compartments, cases for scientific instruments, boxes for tea, wine, cigars, and musical instruments. He said, "If a customer can dream it, I will build it." No request was too strange. Each new challenge made the brand stronger. More than trunks. Louis began designing smaller travel pieces, handbags, tool cases, shoe boxes, portable writing desks. Each item was crafted with the same care as a trunk. People didn't just buy them. They showed them off. Owning a Vuitton meant style, success, and sophistication. A vision that never changed. Even with all this growth, Louis stayed the same in one way. He never made cheap versions. He never allowed shortcuts. He never chased trends. He said, "Let others copy. Let others sell fast. We build things that last." He believed in legacy, and he knew legacy takes time. His name was now known across Europe, and his reputation rested on one word: excellence. A name that must not be forgotten. The final lessons from a father. In the late 1880s, Louis was growing older. He still worked with his hands, still checked every trunk. But he spent more time watching Georges. One evening, sitting by the fire, Louis said, "When I'm gone, don't try to be me. Be better. Protect the name. Never sell cheap. Never follow fashion. Let others run fast. We must run deep." Georges nodded. He understood that he would carry not just a business, but a dream born in hunger, pain, and hope. The end of a journey, and the start of another. In 1892, Louis Vuitton passed away. He was 70 years old. From a barefoot village boy, he had become one of the most respected craftsmen in Europe. His funeral was simple, but many came: workers, clients, neighbors, and friends. Not because he was rich, but because he had changed their lives. And now, the future of the brand was in Georges' hands. Georges Vuitton's first challenge. Just months after Louis's death, a problem exploded. Fake Vuitton trunks were being sold in markets across France. They looked real, but they weren't. Cheap materials, poor design, no quality. People were being tricked, and Louis's reputation was at risk. Georges knew what he had to do. He sat down at his father's desk and began sketching. Lines, shapes, letters. What he created would become one of the most famous patterns in the world. The birth of the monogram. In 1896, Georges introduced the LV monogram, the letters L and V, overlapping in elegant form. Surrounded by flowers, diamonds, and stars. It was more than decoration. It was protection. A way to say, "This is real. This is ours. This is Vuitton." And it worked. Customers loved it. Copycats hated it. The pattern became a symbol of authenticity. Even today, over 100 years later, it's still used. From trunks to fashion icons, Georges didn't stop with the monogram. He expanded the brand into elegant handbags for ladies, compact trunks for car and train travel, special cases for typewriters, cameras, and even champagne. He understood one thing very clearly: luxury was changing. It was no longer only for kings and queens. It was now for the powerful and the modern. And Louis Vuitton was ready. Surviving the Great Depression. In 1929, the world collapsed into an economic crisis. The Great Depression. Banks closed. Jobs were lost. Millions had no food, no savings. Luxury seemed meaningless again. But Georges made a choice. He did not cut prices. He did not chase the mass market. Instead, he created more exclusive items for the few who still had wealth. Because he knew, the rich always find a way to stay rich. And they always want the best. War returns. In 1939, another storm came: World War II. France was invaded. Paris was occupied by the Nazis. Businesses were forced to choose: close, obey, or resist. The Louis Vuitton company tried to survive. Later, reports showed that the brand worked with the occupied government. It was a dark chapter, and for many years, it remained hidden. But even in this time, the workshops stayed open. Artisans continued to work, to protect their jobs and skills. And the name Vuitton survived. The rebirth after war. After the war ended, Europe was broken. But Georges began rebuilding the brand. He opened new stores, designed new products, and created bags that would become icons. The Speedy bag, small, elegant, for city life. The Keepel, perfect for quick travel. The Noé bag, designed to carry champagne bottles safely. These weren't just bags. They were pieces of everyday luxury. They told people, you don't need a crown to carry Vuitton. You just need taste. The billion-dollar legacy. A brand at a crossroads. By the 1950s, Louis Vuitton had survived war, crisis, and competition. But now, the world was moving faster than ever. Airplanes replaced long train rides. Modern fashion was changing every season. Luxury was no longer just tradition, it needed to be visionary. Georges was aging, so he brought in his son-in-law, Henry Rackemeyer, to guide the next chapter. Henry was not a trunk maker. He was a businessman with a dream: to make Louis Vuitton the most powerful luxury brand in the world. The rise of global luxury. Henry made bold moves. 1. Expansion worldwide. He opened stores in the United States, Japan, and the Middle East, targeting the wealthiest 1% of every nation. 2. Raising prices. Making Louis Vuitton more exclusive, more desired. Customers saw higher prices as proof of quality. 3. Reinventing the shopping experience. Stores became palaces of luxury. VIP rooms, champagne, and private consultants. Henry didn't want Vuitton to be for everyone. He wanted it to be for the elite only. And it worked. The LVMH revolution. In 1987, Henry made a historic decision. He merged Louis Vuitton with two other French giants, Moet and Chandon, Champagne, Hennessy, Cognac. Together, they formed LVMH, Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy. It became the largest luxury group in the world. Fashion, jewelry, wine, perfume, all under one empire. But success brought competition. A young, ambitious businessman named Bernard Arnault saw potential. In 1989, using smart business tactics, he took control of LVMH. Henry Rackemeyer was out, Arnault was in, and everything changed again. The Arnault era. Under Bernard Arnault, LVMH exploded. He bought brands like Dior, Givenchy, Fendi, Tag Heuer, Bulgari. He took Louis Vuitton to new heights, opened hundreds of stores worldwide, created ultra-luxury limited editions, hired top designers to refresh the image. He understood something simple: People don't just want quality. They want identity. They want to feel special. The power of exclusivity. Today, Louis Vuitton is more than a brand. It is a status symbol, a cultural icon, a statement of success. Some of its most exclusive products include crocodile leather handbags $50,000 plus, custom trunks for jets and yachts, up to $500,000, limited collaborations with artists, designers, and celebrities. Each item is made by hand. Each item tells a story. Each item whispers, "This is not for everyone." From nothing to everything. Let's go back for a moment. Back to a boy walking barefoot. Back to a cold wooden house with a leaking roof. Back to a mother's grave, a lonely road, and a city that didn't care. Louis Vuitton had nothing, but he had a dream. He walked 470 kilometers to chase it. He worked 16 hours a day to build it. He never stopped believing in excellence. And that belief built a company now worth over $500 billion. What it all means. This story is not just about fashion. It's about you. You might not have money. You might not have support. You might feel invisible. But like Louis, you have one thing. A dream. If you fight for it, protect it, and work like no one else, you can create something the world has never seen. Final words. Louis Vuitton's life teaches us, start small. Dream big. Don't follow the crowd, lead it. Never trade quality for speed. When the world says no, keep walking. Success is not where you begin, it's where you refuse to stop. So next time you see a Louis Vuitton bag, remember, it's not just luxury. It's a legacy, built by a boy who once had nothing, except the courage to believe he could be more. And now, maybe you can too. I'm Lenka from Learn Smarter, and I believe in you. See you in the next episode. Thank you for watching. Do you want to learn more English? Watch our next video. And don't forget to like and subscribe. See you soon.